I will never forget when this thing rolled off the truck. I literally could not believe my eyes. What's up, everybody? How's it going? Hope you're having a great day. I'm Brad Dollar, producer, engineer, and coach. Welcome back to the channel. One of my first big jobs in the music industry was helping legendary guitarist and songwriter of the Grateful Dead, Bob Weir, build his dream studio, TRI, otherwise known as Tamalpais Research Institute. There's so many awesome things to talk about from that chapter in my life, but one constant is Bob's studio and how cool it really is. Beyond being an expertly designed place and the fact that it would become a hub for incredible music to come out of, there was a focus on the gear and the space itself being technologically advanced, or at the very least, extremely high-end. So, needless to say, I got to work with and play with some really sweet gear. Understanding how the design and construction and thought process around how certain creative spaces come to exist can inform our own creative processes. The rooms in which we make our music are as much of the instrument as the guitars or the voices we may be using to get those songs to come to life. So when you can build out a space to really equip you to write your best music, do your best mixes, and be your best creative self, you're giving yourself a priceless gift that no amount of post-production or fixing it after you leave the space will ever be able to replace. So in this video, we'll take a quick look at some of the coolest elements in TRI Studios and talk about how they helped usher in a new era of recording and creativity for this legendary Grateful Dead member. But before we get started, it would mean a lot to me if you can jam on that like button and smash the subscribe button. It would let the YouTube algorithm know that my channel exists and to bring this information to more people just like yourself. So without further ado, let's go. So if you're not up to speed on how I arrived at Bob Weir's studio, go ahead and check out the video I made about my music journey thus far, and it'll give you some insight into how I got there and what I've done since. And before we get too deep, let's chat really quickly about what we were doing at TRI Studios and why it was even built in the first place. The Grateful Dead and Bob Weir have had many different iterations of studios over the years, with one of the most famous being Club Front or Front Street in Marin County, California. Bob really wanted to get back into recording and really get into making records and capturing video much more often. The ultimate future of TRI Studios would be that it would become a live streaming destination for people to tune in from all around the internet and all around the world. It was pretty clear that his old space just wasn't going to fit the bill. And having such an expansive vision is what led Bob to the current space that is TRI Studios, which is where my story with him begins. Bob wanted to add all of the facilities needed to make things like live broadcasting, live webcasting, filming, mixing in surrounds, doing tour rehearsals, practices, live recording, overdub recording. He wanted to make sure that the space could do all of it. And in doing so, TRI Studios got outfitted with some of the most advanced gear of the time, and still to this day is one of the most flexible recording spaces I've ever been in my life. So let's get right down to business and talk about two of the coolest things that were actually in the studio. Now, mind you, this list for me is massively long. It goes on for a mile, full of vintage gear and incredible pieces of outboard equipment that were used on famous records and guitars. I mean, there's so much great stuff, but let's talk about two of the things that I think are the most standout and definitely two of the biggest trophy items in the studio. First and foremost for me is the API Vision that's installed in the main control room of the studio. With every decade that goes by, fewer and fewer new large format analog consoles are being produced, let alone designed and put into production. But the API Vision is one of those newer consoles that was recently made but has all of the glory of its other analog predecessors. The Vision has always been API's tip of the spear when it comes to the battle with SSL and even gear like the control services that Avid makes. API designed the Vision to have that front end that's really inspiring and punchy and powerful that you come to expect from their other products, but with the flexibility that is incredibly necessary for modern productions. In terms of the sound, because this console is equipped with such big power rails, is loaded with transformers and 2520 op amps, and just in general is put together extremely well, the sound of this desk is something very special. You get all of that presence and low-end punch that you expect with other API products like the 512C preamp or the 2500 compressor, but that's married with a huge amount of headroom that makes this console work just as well on a rock record as it would on a classical record. It somehow manages to be super colorful and super clean at the same time, and it's no surprise that Universal Audio has an emulation of a channel strip from an API Vision console. So the sound of it is amazing. Secondly, the functionality of it is really, really special for being a large format analog console. At TRI Studios, we did a lot of live tracking with full bands that had a lot of auxiliary members, so not just guitar and bass and drums, but also percussion and keys and background vocalists and horns and samplers and all kinds of other things that would come into the fold. And so having a lot of inputs was super necessary. And not just having inputs into Pro Tools, but actually having control, having access to control the level, having access to equalization and compression on each of the channels. The fact that the API Vision can handle that and still be this big, beautiful analog desk that can compare to a classic Neve is something really, really unique. And not to mention the automation system on the API Vision is totally usable and user-friendly, and even interfaces with Pro Tools. So getting to use such a flexible desk like this made all of the work that we did at Bob Weir's that much more fun, and the end result that much higher of quality. Whether it was a live broadcast to the web with an artist like The National, or doing the surround remix on the anniversary release of Primus's Sailing the Seas of Cheese. The desk could do it all. And thinking about all of the sonic mobility that's available to you on a console like the API Vision can help you reflect on your own space and wonder, how much more flexible can I make it? How can I reduce the time that it takes me to get from my idea to something finished coming out of the speakers? What kind of setup can I provide for myself so as soon as I get inspired, I can lay something down and get it done? Or if I'm a finisher, if I'm a mixer, how can I actually get to that sonic completion faster using the tools I have? Or maybe I need to go get a new tool. Looking at something as inspiring as the API Vision is more than just gear lust. It becomes a place for you to understand what you might actually be missing in your workflow as you make your own music. And then lastly, on a personal note, I will never forget when Bob's API Vision rolled off the truck. I literally could not believe my eyes, because at that point, I never thought I would see a new console being installed, let alone being delivered, especially not one on this level. So beyond just being a great piece of gear, it was a really memorable time and moment in my life, and see the birth of a new era for Bob in that studio. So the API Vision, if you want to check it out yourself, I highly encourage you to go check out API Audio. You can also get an emulation from Universal Audio of the actual API Vision channel strip, which sounds great, and honestly, it's pretty close. So that's the first of today's very cool items from Bob Weir Studio. And lastly, for now, the other really cool piece of gear that was installed in the TRI Studios is hard to even categorize as a piece of gear, but it is the Meyer Sound Constellation system, which was built into the main recording space of TRI Studios called Studio One. If you're not familiar with the Meyer Constellation system, I highly recommend you go check it out. Go check out some videos and get some perspective on what this amazing technology does. Essentially, what the Meyer Constellation system does is create a room within the room you're in, so that you have control over the actual sonic perception you have of the space itself. With the Constellation system, you can make the room you're in sound bigger, sound smaller. You can make it sound like one wall is further away from you or closer to you, like the ceilings are higher or the ceilings are lower, and even simulate the effects of different kinds of materials that the room itself is made out of. The way the Constellation system does this is with the use of an array of microphones and speakers all throughout a room, working in concert along with some processing and computing power to basically turn that room into a reverb unit you're actually in. Originally, it was intended for really being like a monitoring solution for orchestras. A lot of orchestras and symphonies have what's called a shell that goes around them, and it helps bounce off the sound of the orchestra itself back to the symphony and the players, so they can actually hear what they're playing, because they don't really have a monitoring system for most classical music. You rarely see players wearing in-ear monitors, and there's definitely no speakers on the stage at all. And so the way that was accomplished in the past was with the use of acoustics, either by moving a large reflective thing behind the orchestra, or by making sure the hall itself was very tuned and bounced sound back to the orchestra in a way that they could hear it clearly and make sure they were playing in tune and in time with one another. And so the Meyer Constellation system was created to sort of facilitate that same function in the space around an orchestra. But in no time at all, that same technology was being applied to rooms to actually change what the room sounded like on a whim. And it's all controlled via an iPad so that you can actually move things up and down in time. And Bob even had it on a foot controller so we could change the size of the studio on a moment's notice, which had a tremendous impact on performance. I had really never seen anything like this, let alone heard anything like this when Bob put it in his studio. And for many, many months, we watched these speakers get installed and different microphones being installed and everything being set up, and it was kind of like, well, this is going to work, and a lot of questions that were on the table for what seemed like almost 2 years. But by the time it was up and running, installed and tweaked and tuned, it was truly an immersive, unforgettable experience. And the result is an incredible recording space that can sound like anything from Columbia Studios in New York from its heyday in the 60s to a very tight modern space, which you hear on current records that come out. Anything is possible in that room, and as a result, you have a very inspiring space that can create expansiveness for your ideas. The Meyer Constellation system is so believable that when it's on and you turn it off suddenly, that sudden suction of reverberation out of your listening path can almost make your stomach feel a little queasy. It almost makes your guts feel a little weird, like a roller coaster ride or something. So it's very believable, even if you're trying to trick your brain into thinking that, oh, I know it's not real. Psychoacoustically, your brain is really gonna be like, I think this is real, dude. And it creates an immersive experience without really even trying. Furthermore, the Constellation system made it so live tracking in the space was really easy and really doable. Since the space itself, when you turn the Constellation system off, is pretty dead and everything is very absorbed, it was very easy to put things like drums and amps away from one another and make it so there was some isolation, but still be able to track live, play live, see each other, and really get that beautiful aspect that comes from live performance that not only sounds good in all recordings, but Bob Weir and the Grateful Dead are really known for. So the Meyer Constellation system is not only an amazing piece of gear, but an unforgettable technological advancement that I will never forget hearing for the first time, experiencing for the first time, and getting to use with all the music that I make with Bob Weir at TRI Studios. So Meyer Constellation system, highly recommend you check it out, see if you can find a venue that might have it installed, and go get a dose of what it feels like to stand in TRI Studios where Bob Weir installed one of the first Constellation systems in a room ever. So that's what I got for you for now. Again, there's so many inspiring aspects of TRI Studios that I can talk about for days. So if you want to hear more about it, let me know and I'll make some more videos about the sessions I've done there, other gear, and just what a wonderful time in my life that working with Bob Weir and TRI Studios has been. So again, when it comes down to studying creative spaces that belong to other people and other artists, we can really learn a lot about what we may be missing in our own space and make it so we have everything we need to create the best art and the best music that we can. So I hope this was helpful. If you haven't already, be sure to hit the like and the subscribe button and stay tuned for more videos just like this. Until next time, thanks so much for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.